the self receiving and accepting its function. The self receives its own freedom, its own contraction and relaxation, absorption and release in the fulfillment of this meditation. And then in the third paragraph, she goes on to say, it is unconstructed stillness that receives the benefit of this activity, this practice. Because it is unconstructed, it does not appear within perception. Hence, the deep and subtle work of practice is mysterious, unrecognizable to consciousness. Okay, so in this first paragraph, when she's talking about the self, she quotes Dogen as talking about the self. Dogen, one of Dogen's most famous short sayings is, to study the Buddha way is to study the self. To study the self is to forget the self. And to forget the self is to be enlightened by the 10,000 things. The 10,000 things is like a symbol for everything. Our whole being, everybody's being, the whole universe, reality as it is. So when she's talking in this first paragraph here, when she's quoting Dogen, when he says, unfabricated, clear seeing, unconstructed in stillness, and self-fulfillment or self-enjoyment, the self receiving and accepting its function. He's not talking about, she writes it in here with the small s, self with a small s, but Dogen's talking about the big self and with a capital S. In other words, the self that is all of us together, as well as our deep conditioning to think that we exist as a small, separate body-mind. But Dogen's talking about how, in forgetting the small self, we realize the oneness of the big self. And so, I'm always reminded, and I think in most talks I give now, I somehow get around to quoting Buddha on the morning of his enlightenment, where he says, I and all beings together attain the way. So he realized that all beings are his being, and everyone is everyone else's being. And there is no separation between my being, your being, between our lives. And so unconstructed stillness means one whole being, like she says, it's not visible to perception or to consciousness. So it's imperceivable or imperceptible and not describable. So we can't know it with our thinking mind. And so when we start Buddhist practice, we're confronted with this, not confronted, but we're offered the teaching to open to the possibility that we don't really exist the way we think we exist, the way we're conditioned to exist as separate body minds, that we're all one being together. And so the practice, the meditation, is how do we realize this in our life and then take it into our life and live it for the welfare of all beings. So the teaching, is that our Buddha nature is always here, always now. And that's what we are. How do we make that into our actual experience? And I kind of start with, space. He says that space has no dimensions. In the Lotus Sutra, he says this in many, many times. Space has no dimension. In other words, it's totally boundless. Isn't that our experience if we try to imagine going out in space and how far it extends? Is there an end, any conceivable end to it? No. And he also says that our being is timeless or ever present. Can we imagine a beginning or an end to time? No, we can't. So that's why the teaching is that it's mysterious. We can't get our mind around it. And another way to say it is we don't know what we are, who or what we really are. But we're here in this unconstructed stillness together. And the teaching is to learn how we all are here together and how we can learn to relieve the suffering of us all, and even in Buddha's teaching, to even go beyond that, to include relieving suffering, but to learn how to accept suffering, to end suffering. So we open to these possibilities. So she talks about the practice is to penetrate the membrane of mentality that's between us and our life, that seems to be between us and our life. And so that reminds me of, one of my teachers, who was also Catherine's teacher, is Reb Anderson, and those of you who've been around a while, we studied his book a couple years ago, Entering the Mind of Buddha. And he had some interesting things to say. He quotes Buddha as saying some interesting things about thinking. He said that things aren't what we think they are. Not only are they not what we think they are, but they're free of what we think they are. So the absence of what we think about things is the way they actually are. And he doesn't mean that we don't think about things, but that our thinking doesn't describe the way things actually are. And so the Reb quotes Buddha in the Lotus Sutra saying, Bodhisattva, those who have given their whole life for the welfare of all beings, to realize great enlightenment for the welfare of all beings. They're always thinking. They're always thinking about how to save all beings from suffering. But they don't grasp their thoughts, because they realize that things can't be grasped. Our being or our Buddha nature can't be grasped. It's not perceivable or describable, right? So they don't grasp their thinking. They offer their thoughts, their thinking energy, their thinking. They offer it as gifts for all beings as they spread the teaching. So because they don't grasp it, their thinking doesn't disturb their deep tranquility. And so one of the great Zen masters who's still alive in America now is Kwong Roshi. And he said that Zen practice, or Zen itself, is the aliveness we bring to each moment. And it's unconstructed, in stillness. It's aliveness that is free of our thinking. But it's fully alive. And so in the, that we're being offered this deep teaching right from the start, because we sometimes chant the Heart Sutra that says all things are expressions of emptiness. In other words, empty of being perceivable or describable, empty of being comprehensible, but fully alive, as Kwong Roshi says. we chant. We just finished chanting Hakuin's Song of Zazen, where he says, "Our thought being no thought, our dancing and song is the voice of the Dharma." So contemplate that our thinking isn't what we think it is. That our thinking isn't something that we can really know what it is, but we can use it. We use the energy of our thinking as conversations with each other to kind of help us gain an intuitive sense of our shared being. What I've learned more and more over the years, that love, loving the world as it is not a state of mind, or it's not just an emotion, a fleeting emotion like most of our emotions are, but it's more of a recognition of our shared being. I had a painful experience about 8 months ago. I've always been a real dog person, and I had an 11-year-old lab that he was my baby, because I live alone the last 5 years, 5 or 8 years, I guess. And if you've ever had a lab, they love you to death. So we were very, very close. And he had a hip operation, and last summer he started feeling bad, and I wasn't quite sure what it was, and I was going to take him in to see the vet. And one morning in the dark, I got up and I just hugged him, and he used to like to make these little love grunts. He'd just kind of grunt, I don't know, not growl, a grunt. That was his way of communicating. And I hugged him, and he just started into this really melodious grunting. It was almost like the Om sound, And we just were there for about 5 minutes, and the vibrations were just very powerful, very powerful. And I really got a sense of our shared being, that we're recognizing our shared being, and old friends of mine have said that it's people who say that dogs aren't enlightened. So I think there's something to that. But, and then it was only a few days later that when I took him in, they thought it was a urinary tract infection, but it turned out that the cancer had already spread into his lungs and was, all over his body. It happened very fast. And so I had to put him down that night, and I knew I'd feel guilty for putting him down the same day, kind of thing. I brought my son over, and we cried and did it. Because I knew, they said, you can keep him alive, but he's not gonna have any quality of life. And I thought, okay, I'm gonna feel guilty doing it, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I'd rather feel guilty than have him suffer for a month or whatever it is, So I did that. So we, but the grieving wasn't as hard as I thought it was because of those experiences, those intimate experiences, and the love we shared. I realized, I really had a deep realization that it's not in the body, that love. It's not confined in the body, in the physical body. So it was like he wasn't really gone, totally gone. I mean, the love was still present, and it was sad. It was sad love for a long time. And it hurt, and I did some good cathartic crying, and so we go on, It's hard because dogs, it's the innocence and the lack and the unconditional love. And that's the nature of our true being. That's the nature of our Buddha nature, is that it's unconditionally accepting, and it's not stained by experience. It has no limitations, and it's ever present. So the real important part of our practice, the most important part of our practice, is that recognition of our shared being. And but that is the nature of our being. You know, our Buddha nature is ever present. It's boundless, has no limits. And it's not stained or harmed by any experience. And it is shared. Our being is shared. So that's the power of our Sangha, is that we explore the nature of that by which we know our experience, by which we know our aliveness, and then we share that, and we deepen our aliveness and our intuition of the being we share together. So, I think that's enough for me. We have some time for discussion.
She can. Thank you. It was a beautiful talk. Your dog was quite a guy. And I think any of us who have lost beloved pets can really empathize with that and feel that. Yet, when you spoke of how, even though your friend is gone, he's not gone. He's still there. And I think many of us have experienced that with the loss of a loved one, a sibling, a parent, a good friend, a spouse. And and we carry that with us. People we have loved and people who have loved us, we carry that connection, I think, our whole lives. And it's sometimes when I think about my dad, I just start crying because of the special relationship that we had. And so I feel that this is something that we humans can identify with, and also use it to remind us of what our invitation is from Buddha, how to be in the world. To love as best we can, even the people we can't stand, but love them as best we can.
Yeah.
And but it takes. I hate to we overuse the word practice, but it is a practice. And I think at the end, the sentence that I really appreciated in her piece was this one: the willingness to be in this unconstructed stillness of our life doesn't mean only in Zazen. We can do it at work, in our relationships with our family members, our friends. This is what the world asks of us. You know, it doesn't ask us to go out and climb a mountain or save the Everglades. It asks us to be in this stillness and realize this connection wherever we go. And then, as we know, the response to whatever is happening around us seems to come without our even trying to figure it out. So it's a gift that the Buddha gave us, this insight, an example.
Yeah, thank you. And we receive that gift, and we're receiving that great compassion of the Buddha. That's the nature of our Buddha nature, the unconditional acceptance, but also the bestowing of great compassion. And we learn to be kind even to our, when you were mentioned, to be kind even to those people we don't necessarily have a great affinity for sometimes, but be kind to our inability to be kind. And then that opens it up, to being able to, it's easier if we're kind to our inability to be kind to ourselves, then we can be kind to other people's inability to be kind. Okay.
Great talk. So accepting the life as it is, this chapter really hits the mark in my personal being. I mean, losing a someone to a cancer is tough, but this practice making me realize when you're accepting the life as it is, to me it means if the person is gone, it's okay. Now my life is to cherish the good memories, happiness memories. And that is the way the life is, right? So you accept the memories, good memories, but then you also say this universe is allowing me to make me make more memories, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good or bad, but it is a chance, it's a gift is giving to me, right? So that is what keeps me going, right? And I really, so this chapter is very important to me, accepting the way that things are. I have no more delusions or illusions, this is the way it is, right? So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm reminded of Buddha's teaching that the boundary of what we can accept is the boundary of our freedom. And so if we fully accept our true nature, we're accepting that freedom of our true nature, that's boundless, that's free. And then we can accept that kindness and that compassion for the people we've lost and for the people, and realizing that, we're all going to be lost. We're all going to die. And when we realize that we are dying and all beings are dying along with us, that is the birth of great compassion, I think. Also, yeah.
In terms of practice, this is our practice. And Dogen actually, throughout the Shobogenzo, also talks about this as training. So yes, we're constantly training. But when Roger was talking, I'm reminded of a saying, which is actually from Psalms in the Old Testament, that Mitch, our founder, used to talk about, and that was, "Be still and know that I am God." But what he would do is go backwards with it, and he would say, "Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still. Be." And then there's no words. There's just the boundlessness of no words after be. And that has always been very profound to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just be. Wow.
Well, beyond the be, because there's no
Yeah.
be. It just goes away.
It just goes away.
Yeah.
And then something is here now. Yeah. As I say.
Well, my Tai Chi teacher says there's something going on here.
Right.
He doesn't go any further than that. There's something going on here.
Yeah. But then in relation to our thinking, you could say, you don't have to know to be, but you have to be to know.
I think that goes back to the unconstructed stillness that she was referring to in the book, and loving the world as it is, not as we think about it, or our thoughts about the world, but letting go of that, letting go of our fabrications, the unfabricated, unconstructed. I found that very helpful, especially dealing with these times, but that really helped. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate all the talks and the insights.
Just wanted to share that it's very challenging leaving here and not wanting to hang on to these thoughts and conceptualize and intellectualize when we hear so many beautiful, beautiful ideas that you share, so thank you.
We are near the end of our time here. Would anyone else like to offer their insight? Well, there is an important announcement about Saturday. If you want to be with us on Saturday, it's all online. Gato?
Someone else had an insight?
Someone asked a question.
Go.
As far as when you're forgetting yourself, to study yourself, how do you forget yourself without running from things about yourself that maybe you are trying not to deal with, or just trying to deal with one side instead of this side, the side that you may like, and not dealing with the side that you may not like so much?
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a good question. Well, the practice basically is to not grasp at our experience, whatever it is, thoughts, feelings, perceptions, sights and sounds. Don't grasp and don't turn away. Just stay present. And, in terms of kindness, be kind to our inability to do that, to the distractions. Because if we're kind to our distractions, we'll be more tranquil. And tranquility is one of the main virtues of our Zazen. We're receiving the tranquility, the peace of our inherent nature when we do that. So it's just notice the impulse to run away and be kind to it. But you're not going anywhere unless you get up and, if you stay with it, you won't go anywhere. It's okay. Just be kind to the impulse to want to run away.
Yeah, running away doesn't work because wherever you go, there you are.
Right.
Jason, did you want me to make announcements now?
I think that would be fine.
Thank you. I'm sorry to have interrupted you before, but
No, that's okay.
if there's questions. So, I hope everyone is opening up their emails and reading them, because you will look very silly on Saturday if you're waiting outside for them to show up, because I'll be in Philadelphia. So Saturday, we will be online only. I sent everyone on our email list a link. Please arrive in the Cloud Zendo 5 to 10 minutes before 8 o'clock in the morning when we start. Matt, our priest who lives in England, will be doing 3 service positions and chanting and presenting the gospel. Mathis. So, I'll be thinking of him when I'm in